Hello everybody, it's Miss Deans here. In this video we are going to look at developing our report writing skills by researching and writing a report about cars. Now the report that you're going to write for this task is going to have three sections. Your first section is going to be about early cars up to about 1900. You're going to see a series of sources and you'll find in it information about steam, petrol, the inventor of cars, the shape of cars and so on. Your second section is going to be about cars from the 1900s to the 1990s. And in the sources that you're going to see in this PowerPoint, you'll find information about petrol, mass production, the shape of cars and so on. For the final section of your presentation, you're going to be talking about modern cars. So you'll talk about fuel, new types of vehicles and predictions for the future. This task is going to be a bit trickier than the last report you tried because you're going to need to do your own research for the final section of the report. The slides that you are going to see in this PowerPoint with information only go up to about the 1990s. So you are going to have to find more up-to-date information and also have a little think about what cars might be like in the future. You can find that information by yourself. You can have a look online. If you're doing that, try and make sure that you find reliable sources, sources that are trustworthy, sources from companies that you've heard of, like the BBC, for example. Or you can look at the following links on the PowerPoint that you can see in front of you to get some information. Now these links should give you enough information to do the final part of your report, and I'll also include the links in the description for this video so that you can just click on them. So how will you know if you've been successful at this task? Let's look at the success criteria. First of all, you're going to have to select and organise your information sensibly. You're going to see a lot of information on the next few slides, but it's not going to all be in the order that you would put it into a report. So you have to pick the information that's important and decide what order you're going to put it in. You've already got your different headings, so that should give you an idea. We want you to paraphrase the information rather than copying it out or copying and pasting when it comes to doing your own research if you're using the internet. Paraphrasing means to use your own words. You should have already done some work on how to use your own words, how to change the words of the writer into your own. And remember, we do this to show that we understand what we've read or that we understand what we've heard. There will be very specific words, technical kind of words, we sometimes call technical language jargon, that you can't change. For example, you can't change a word like combustion engine, you can't change a phrase like combustion engine into another phrase. But you want to change the way that sentences start and you want to change the other words around so that you're not just copying exactly what the writer has written. And the reason for this is to show that you understand it. You could just copy and paste a big paragraph from something off the internet, but your teacher would spot it straight away and it wouldn't show that you understand what you've read. We also want you to link your ideas effectively using linking words and phrases. What we don't want to have is a report that just reads like a big list of things that have happened in the history of cars. Some of the sources that you're going to look at are written as a list, but that's not what you're doing. You're not producing a timeline, you're writing a report. It's going to be in sentences and paragraphs, and so to link your ideas together, you're going to need to use linking words and phrases. Further on in the presentation, you're going to see some examples of linking words and phrases that you can use if you're not sure. And finally, we're looking for you to write at least 300 words for this report. That would probably be a page and a bit of A4 paper if you were handwriting and you've got average sized handwriting. You can write more than that if you want to. It's also fine to type your work up or to handwrite it. So when you come to make your notes, as you read or listen to the sources, you're going to want to note down what you think the important facts are. It might be a good idea to have a bit of paper with the different headings written on them already and then space to write down your notes. You don't have to write in full sentences at this point in time. Bullet points are probably going to be more appropriate. When you come to actually write your report, then you will turn your notes into full sentences and paragraphs. and different headings will help you keep your notes organised. You can also use spider diagrams or other methods of recording your notes if you like. Here you can see some examples of linking words and phrases that you can use when it comes to write your report, when you're turning your notes into paragraphs and sentences. If you're putting ideas in order, if, for example, you want to take a list of things that happened in the history of the car and turn it into paragraphs and sentences, you could use words like first, second, third, or firstly, secondly, thirdly. You could say at this time, before, subsequently, which just means after this, or finally. If you're comparing things or comparing events or comparing different cars, you might say similarly, which means in the same sort of way, unlike, in the same way, instead of, or alternatively. And if you want to suggest that something happened as a result of something else, that one thing caused another, so if you're talking about cause and effect, you could use words like because, although we don't usually use that at the beginning of a sentence, we use it in the middle of a sentence. So, therefore, thus, or as a consequence of this, which means something like as a result of this. These are all good linking words and phrases that you can use when it comes time to write your report. Now, the remaining slides on this presentation are going to consist of the actual sources that you should use when you are writing your report. And this will help you with part 1 and part 2. Remember, for the third part of your report, you're going to need to do your own research. So let's have a little look and see what information is in these sources. You might want to have a pen and a piece of paper ready so that you can record what you think the important information is. And remember, you can pause and rewind and replay this video as often as you like. The History of the Motor Car, Part 1. 1857. Petrol was discovered. 1862. A Frenchman, Etienne Lenoir, mounted the engine he had built between the wheels of an old horse cart. He drove it through the Vincennes forest near Paris. Carriages powered by steam engines had been about for nearly 100 years. Lenoir invented the first internal combustion engine. It worked by burning gas inside a cylinder. Soon these engines could be driven on petrol, and experiments were being carried out to produce the first motor cars. 1885. The first car sold to the public was produced in the workshops of Karl Benz in Mannheim in Germany. 1895. In Britain, the Locomotive on Highway Act raised the speed limit on roads to 12 miles per hour. The regulation stating that any moving car must be preceded by a pedestrian with a flag was abolished. The History of the Motor Car, Part 2. 1896. First car workers received their pay packets after their week's work in the newly opened Daimler factory, which made the first all-British cars. 1900. 23 cars completed a run of 1,000 miles from London to Scotland and back. 1923. Lead was added to petrol for the first time to improve performance. 1990. It became clear that lead in petrol was polluting the atmosphere. 1997. The Toyota Prius, the world's first hybrid electric vehicle, is released. Changing face of cars, 1850s to 1910s. Early cars were built with the model of horse-drawn carriages in mind. The driver's seat was high up. The engine was placed under the driver's seat. The front of the car had a dashboard, a relic of the board used to protect the coachman from mud and stones thrown up by the horse's feet. As time passed, changes came about. The engine was placed at the front. Luxury models were designed for the wealthy and their chauffeurs. Some cars had roofs, though special protective clothing was still recommended. The first mass-produced car, the Model T Ford, was made in America in 1908. It was tough and reliable and was within the price range of every working American family. Changing face of cars, 1920s to 1990s. The stylish cars of the 1920 era in America reflected the wealth of gangsters and film stars. By the 1930s, the rest of the world was catching up, and the Austin in Britain produced its own small compact car suitable for family use, very like the Ford in appearance. In the 1950s, America demonstrated its wealth with long, low models, while in Europe, the small VW Beetle and the famous Mini Minor caught the imagination. In the 1960s, metallic paint was used for the first time, with blue, turquoise and green proving popular. Car design in the 1980s emphasised boxy designs that focused on safety and reliability. However, by the 1990s, sports cars like the Porsche 911 brought elegant curves back into fashion. We've now looked at all the sources in this presentation, we've talked about the success criteria, and it's now your job to take your notes, organise all your information in a sensible way, do your research for the final part of your presentation, and then put that together as a report. Good luck, and I'll see you again soon.